All right, welcome back to another week of Niche Pursuits News. My name is Jared Bauman. Today we're talking about the after effects from Google's enforcement of its site reputation abuse policy. We often refer to it as parasite SEO, and Google started clamping down in recent months on big sites like Forbes, CNN, and the like. Well, the data's in, and these sites are experiencing pretty huge losses, some of them very, very large. And we're going to dive into all those details. In addition, we've got a story on ads being introduced into an AI software and what that could mean going forward for all of the different AI softwares that we use on a regular basis. And a big platform that many SEOs and online marketers use is shutting down pretty much ASAP. That's not all, of course. We've got our side hustle updates, a couple of interesting and weird niches. Joining me today is Thomas Smith. Thomas, welcome.
Great to be back.
Good to have you. It's funny, we keep having this happen with co-hosts. We kind of have co-hosts that come on regularly and alternate. And I feel like the last time you were on, we were talking about this topic of the site reputation abuse with some of the larger websites like Forbes and stuff. And here we are, we have an update a couple weeks later, you're back. So I feel like you're going to be very familiar with it.
It's perfect timing. It's almost like it moves in a cycle. Yeah, it takes a couple weeks and we have a check-in. So yeah, big movement there. It'll be very interesting to talk through it.
I'm looking forward to your side hustle update for the record. I've seen the agenda. Bizarre would be the word I'm going to say. I don't know how you ended up in this side hustle. So stay tuned. If you think Thomas is the man of many side hustles, he's now about to introduce what I will call a very bizarre side hustle into the mix. All right, let's go ahead and get into our first story here of the day. Like we teased at the outset, there have been some large losses in the site reputation abuse side of large publications like a Forbes, a CNN, and many, many more. Again, this is actually not a very long story, but it's a very kind of in-depth story. Mm-hmm. So what I'm going to do is kind of just give the high-level overview of it. Basically, there's been a significant drop in search visibility for the affiliate side, and just the affiliate side, by the way, if you're wondering, of major publishers like Forbes, CNN, Time, and most of this is attributed to Google's recent policy changes regarding third-party run affiliate businesses. So it's basically this idea that, as we covered before, Forbes and CNN, they use a third-party affiliate company to publish a totally separate set of content on their website. And so these declines started, as you can see on the screen here, in July, but really picked up at the end of September. What we're seeing here is Forbes Advisor. So here's the data. Forbes Advisor down 43%. Wow. Wall Street Journal buy side, 77% decline. CNN underscored, 63% decline. Fortune recommends, 72% decline. And then here's the big one, and you can see it in the yellow there. Time stamped, 97%. And you can see it's really interesting. That drop-off, the drop-offs are different, right? In terms of how they are. If you're not able to see on screen, you're listening. Some of the drop-offs look very algorithmic, meaning they're kind of a gradual drop-off. And many of them, or at least one, I'll say, time stamped, looks almost like a manual penalty there at the end of September. And then it's continued to drop off since then. So really quickly, and then Thomas, again, want to bring you in because we covered this story and kind of the in-depth behind the scenes on it a couple weeks ago. But Systrix estimated that the collective lost traffic is worth about $7.5 million, which almost seems to underscore or underreport, how I guess influential or crazy this is. We went into depth last time on the story a couple weeks ago about the Forbes Marketplace, which is a different company than Forbes, and Forbes Marketplace is who runs a lot of this affiliate content. Now here we are, and we've got major drops coming. We've got actual evidence of Google coming in and saying, no, we don't like this. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think it's gratifying in the first place there because we were kind of at the very beginning of the story, and it was like, hey, we're seeing some downward movement on this one, with Forbes Marketplace, this one sort of big affiliate play from one of these giant brands. And we extrapolated from that this was going to be a big change. It was going to change the affiliate space, but we were still very early to that story. And I think we kind of went with our gut on reporting that. We had some early coverage in our industry to report on at that time. So to see how it's played out in the way that we anticipated that it would, with this affecting more brands, to see it in a publication that extends beyond our little corner of the publishing world, Adweek covering this, to see some of our friends, quoted in there. it's I think useful to see it reported on in kind of a broader context. Like, this is not just a big deal for our industry. It's a big deal for publishing in general. It's probably a big deal for the bottom lines of some of these companies that have kind of created this little cash cow, and they probably didn't realize it was all going to be taken away. Just like, a year and a half ago, a lot of us found that pretty much all our traffic was taken away. So I think there's, for one thing, just good confirmation that this is actually happening, and seeing these really unambiguous results and seeing it affect so many different kind of flavors of the same thing, people who use the same companies, big brands. And I think, as a small publisher, it's kind of nice to see big guys get treated the same way that we are in some ways, maybe even getting, hammered a bit more. Like 97% loss is pretty substantial. So, you never want to see people lose all their traffic. It's not fun to imagine being in their shoes. But at the same time, it feels like there's finally a little bit of fairness between the big brands and the small publishers like us.
Do you ever get stuck in your business and wish you had someone you could turn to for solutions? Well, I think you should consider joining the Niche Pursuits community. You'll get weekly calls with experts on growing a successful online business, and you'll also get assigned a small mastermind group where you can solve your business problems as well as share your wins. For a limited time, I'll let you try out the Niche Pursuits community for just $1. Go ahead and use coupon code PODCAST at checkout in order to get your first month for just $1. Again, that's coupon code PODCAST. Go to community.nichepursuits.com today and see what it's all about. And maybe I'll see you on our call next week. Thanks a lot.
It's interesting. I want to come back to that on small publishers because I have a point that I wanted to ask you about as well. And so it's interesting that you brought that up. I wanted to highlight this quote here. A Google spokesperson told Adweek, quote, "We're working to combat tactics where third parties try to exploit a site's reputation just to rank well in search. We recently updated our spam policies to specifically target this type of behavior." Mm-hmm. So we knew about that. That was updated probably back in March. Said it was going to go into play in May. Never did. Glenn Gabe was in the news a couple weeks ago, like looking at this, analyzing, was this algorithmic or was it a manual penalty? I'm not even sure we really know yet. No one's really said. I know that I believe it was Danny Sullivan or someone from Google came out and said, no, this isn't, this isn't what you're suggesting it is. Like, this is just part of what we're doing, kind of keeping it vague. I mean, some of the graphs look they look like a very slow downturn over the course of several weeks. But it is interesting to try to figure out like how they're doing this. Systrix Steve Payne, I'll read that. I'll read a quote on that as well. He surmised the crackdown required either specific algorithms or a human touch. So, a quote, "To target at a directory level, that would require some very specific algorithms or a human touch." I would say this is almost unprecedented. So, I mean, to your point, like, I agree. Like, my question to you is going to be, if small publishers like the U and the I, the niche websites, the content sites, the authority sites of the world, if they aren't ranking any longer post HCU for affiliate style content, and if now we have these large brand kind of high DR sites like Forbes that aren't ranking for really affiliate content anymore, what's going to be left in the SERPs there? Like, what is Google wanting to put in there if they don't want us small publishers and they don't want third-party content on a Forbes or the like? What's going to go there?
Well, AI overviews. I think we all know that something AI flavored is going to go there, realistically. So I think, that's obviously SERP diversity has been sort of a big thing at Google. And we see that with the AI overviews, but also I think we're going to see more video for a lot of this stuff. I've seen a big increase on my YouTube channel, for example. And, I think it's the time of the year, so it's a little hard to sort of sort that out. But even on more kind of things that aren't exactly a review, that aren't exactly tied to the season, I've definitely seen a bump up there. So I don't think the traffic's just all going to go back to our blogs, unfortunately.
Like, ask if maybe.
I mean, that would be wonderful, but I just don't believe that's going to happen. So I think they've cleared out that space. They've cleared us out of there to a large extent. It's going to be AI stuff that keeps people on the Google domain, that keeps people engaged with them and not going off platform. And when it is sending them elsewhere, I think it's going to be video. It's going to be the sort of newer formats because, and forum posts, as we've seen a lot. But I've seen a bump in video. I think it's going to continue. I think YouTube is the place where all of that kind of stuff we would have done on a niche website maybe 5-6 years ago is living now. The how-tos, the sort of random topics that people cover, the reviews of a product. I think that's where it's going. And it's good that it's not going to these big brands that didn't really do the work. I think the other thing that will happen is these brands are going to pivot. You know, they're not just going to let this go. They're going to hire people in-house. They're going to make it kind of more of a wire cutter model. They might be kind of knocked down. They might have lost their super easy route to these kinds of funds, but they're not going to just, oh, okay, affiliate didn't work. Let's just go back to publishing lots of great editorial stories. No, they're going to find a way to pivot. It's going to take time, but I'm sure we're going to see all these companies back. Just now it's going to be their own writers. Now it's not going to be on a separate domain. It's going to be like baked in a way that it's a little bit harder to target.
I was going to say, it's a good thing to point out, like this is all targeting that third-party style content that tends to live on a subdomain or an area of the site that's easily cut off and traceable because of the way it was set up, which is what that story outlined. And to your point, like this isn't targeting the wire cutter, which yes, they're doing affiliate content. And yes, they're doing it on the New York Times domain, but they're not doing it with a third-party content agency, basically. So yeah, that's a good point. There is the opportunity for them to pivot into doing it more in-house. And in theory, that would be, rewarded. It is interesting almost to circle back. Like you look at the concept now from Parasite SEO, which really this isn't the specific Parasite SEO that a lot of people listening take advantage of, right? Because that is more working your affiliate link or your affiliate relationship into just an article rather than dominating and coming up with a company that will service a Forbes like Forbes Marketplace does. And it's interesting that if that gets also affected by that, where those types of, there will be new opportunities that will get created. And I wonder where those are going to go, because like you said, like there's always going to be room in the SERPs for affiliate style content. And then if we now see forums rise to the top, is that where people will start to target their efforts? If we now see video start to rise to the top, is that where people will start to put their efforts? And going forward, where AI has a role in that, it's really interesting to think about the kind of the ripple effects, I guess, of something like this happening.
Yeah, it's not just going to go away and then, all the traffic goes to blogs and everybody just walks away from it. People are going to find a way to pivot. And yeah, certainly with AI now you can generate a relatively realistic, video of at least more of a faceless style video with a narration, some images in the background. So whether that's going to all get clogged up, I think we're already seeing it with Reddit. I mean, I already see in my own space and in travel, I already see people hijacking Reddit threads where people were genuinely discussing some destination 5 years ago, and they come in and drop in, a link to like a tour or something that's an affiliate link, and they try to pretend like it's just somebody, casually, well, I just happened upon this, here is the best bike to rent in San Francisco or whatever it is. It's already here. I just think it'll accelerate. But I think these brands are going to just have to work harder. They're going to have to hire the people, do the work right, maybe do fewer but more targeted things that actually match with their own focus. And I mean, some of these are hilarious, like time stamped. It almost feels like, they just put their stamp on it, right?
Yeah.
Like
so much innuendo there, right?
Yeah. It's almost like they were aware that this was a little bit ridiculous.
Yeah. There's an element of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess in summary, like we don't have to be altruistic about the fact that, this is an ever-moving target that Google's dealing with. And yet we can still kind of celebrate a bit. Like you said, like, hey, this was something that we were all very frustrated about, that these high DR or high-powered domains were getting treated vastly different than small publishers. Not that that's gone away, but maybe one little victory for the small guys here in this one.
Yeah, and the niche site that I'm going to share later, I think, is a cool example of that effect of a big brand. It's not quite a brand, but I think it's sort of a brand being leveraged in a really good, positive way. So stick around for that. Yeah.
Well, good, man. We're teasing left and right for all the stuff you're bringing in the second half of the podcast. But to get there, we still have a couple more stories we got to cover. Let's move on to the second one here. And this has to do with Perplexity. Perplexity is introducing advertisements. The story I have up in front of us here is on perplexity.ai's website. It's their blog. It says why we're experimenting with advertising. And basically, cat's out of the bag here. Perplexity's announced that they're going to start placing ads into the experience they've created. They're initially going to appear in the US only. There will be two formats. One is going to be sponsored follow-up questions, and the second is paid media displayed on the side of an answer. So ads will be clearly labeled as sponsored. Answers to sponsored questions will be generated through Perplexity's technology, and it won't be influenced by brands. And it's a pretty short article. There's a bunch of drop downs here that you can kind of see what it looks like if you wanted to. Actually, it's only a screenshot. So this is a screenshot of what it will look like. These drop downs don't actually work. If you're not watching on screen, it basically has a very well labeled sponsored at the top. And it's related to obviously the search that's happening. I mean, why does this matter and why is it worth bringing up? We've long talked about. We know that Google, as a traditional search environment, the SERPs, the search engine result page, is just loaded full of advertisements, right? And that's Google's primary business model, their primary revenue model. And we've long wondered, like, how is a ChatGPT going to monetize? Is it just going to be through its, $20 a month subscription? How is a Perplexity.ai going to monetize? How are these platforms going to monetize? And we've always felt like ads were coming. Well, they're here now, and I'm wondering long term what this can signify for the industry. Are you a big user of Perplexity.ai? Do you think this is a good user experience for them? Do you think this is a good step in the ad model direction?
I've tested it out. I've been using Search GPT, which I know we talked about last week on the podcast. I find Perplexity does a really good job of sort of live information, like stuff that's happening right now.
Yeah.
Search GPT doesn't seem to do wequite as well with that. And I think, that's at least how they're justifying adding the ads in, right? They're saying we have this publisher program where we're basically sourcing these live feeds. We're paying publishers for access to that live information, and that we're going to put in ads to kind of subsidize that and help pay for it. I don't know that I 100% buy that. It feels like an excuse that nobody's going to disagree with. Like, oh, great, more money for content creators and publishers. No one's going to get angry about it. But we all know how these things creep, right? Like, I mean, there were at the beginning in Google, there were like one or two sponsored links at the top of the page. They were clearly sponsored. They didn't even necessarily relate to the search. And now for many searches, you've got, 5 links put around there. It's very hard to distinguish what is and isn't sponsored. There's stuff on the side. So I'm sure it'll continue to grow. But I think the way they're approaching it is smart, that it's basically, instead of just kind of displaying an ad like we typically see or trying to sneak it in, they're making it an actual question, right? Like you use the technology, you continue your conversation, but about the brand that's paying for that. So maybe you're looking like, I don't know, how long should I cook my turkey for Thanksgiving? And it gives you an answer. And then it has a question. It's like, what are the sizes of turkey I can get at Whole Foods? Sponsored by Whole Foods. And then you ask that, and then it tells you, and then you say, oh, how long do I cook the 16-pound one? I think making it organic and part of the conversation is really smart. But I also just feel like it's gonna creep to be bigger and bigger. And it also feels like OpenAI has access to these huge amounts of capital. They're raising tons of money. They're worth huge amounts of money now. And Google with Gemini, they don't really have to worry about it. Like they've just got infinite money, essentially. Perplexity is small, and they probably don't have the investment, and they can't just do that standard VC kind of play of like just spend and spend and spend and try to grab as much market share as possible. They have to start to show that there's some route to profitability. So this feels like maybe they're finding it harder to raise, and they need to show, hey, look, there's a revenue model here. We'll throw some ads in. I don't know that it's really going to be the core offering in the long term, but I think they're trying to show like, look, there's a way we can earn money beyond just the subscription fees.
Yeah, I'd play devil's advocate and say, like, I appreciate what they're trying to do in terms of being different. And I'll read the quote out of the blog post just so everybody can hear it. While brands are keen on understanding how their companies appear in AI answer engines like ours, we will avoid duplicating the SEO industry where people are implementing arbitrary tactics to improve their rankings at the expense of user utility. And so, kind of to your point, like, well, first off, it's like a shot across the bow at the way Google does stuff, and a lot of us do it. And so that is what it is. Fair enough. But I'm not sure if I like the experience any better, getting like kind of sort of told by Whole Foods, who you mentioned is one of the notable partners they announced, but Whole Foods, like, hey, by the way, we'll be the ones to tell you what kinds of turkeys to cook for Thanksgiving, but we'll do it kind of subtly. Like, I don't know. I don't love the Google experience. We talk about how ads just litter the SERPs. And to your point, like, it didn't start that way, but it's creeped that way over the last 20 years. So it's interesting to see kind of where this goes. I don't know. I'm kind of curious to use Perplexity. I don't use it a lot. I use it a little bit, kind of like you. I'm kind of curious to see it just to see how this feels. I've long wondered how AI would implement, some of these chatbots would implement, and these AI search platforms would implement ads. So I don't know. I'll fairly say I can see the advantages and the disadvantages pretty clearly. I'm not sure which side I come down on.
It feels very much like the distinction in our space of like affiliate / sponsored stuff versus just straight up putting Mediavine or Raptive on a site. There's something kind of honest about just putting ads on it, even if the user experience is kind of terrible sometimes.
People know that it's an ad.
It's an ad. You've got this content for free. The exchange is that there's going to be ads on it. We're not trying to like work it in or pretend. You're just You're going to have to scroll past a bunch of really annoying stuff, and you're going to get the content. Versus sponsored and affiliate, the page loads faster, it looks better, but then you're constantly having to look and go, oh, is this really an organic post? Is this actually sponsored? Does it say it's sponsored? Is there like an affiliate disclaimer at the very end in little font? That kind of stuff. So I don't know that there's a right answer. It probably depends on the user, right? Like some people would prefer, and some people prefer just to pay, even if it's a lot, to have access to it and not have to have, the distinction at all. And that's kind of where like the mediums of the world come in. I
was going to bring up Medium. Yeah.
Yeah.
And really
you pay your money.
You pay your money. Yeah. And in many ways, what ChatGPT is doing, obviously their premium experience, you still get it for free, but you don't get all the bells and whistles. But that's a third model, right?
Yeah. And I think, that probably some connection between that and what Google is doing, which is like, don't really worry about the chatbot. Like they kind of realize, I think, that they've lost that game with Gemini, and they're just going to bake it into everything else. AI overviews, and now we got Notebook LM, which is pretty awesome, honestly. And, they're just going to put it into Google Docs and into your Gmail and on your phone, and they're going to use it to make their other products better. So I think everyone's trying to figure out the monetization. It's interesting to see Perplexity taking this ad supported approach. And again, you heard it here first, because I think it was 4 weeks ago now, where on the podcast we were saying, well, there's this data that shows that Perplexity is sending more traffic to users' sites than other, kind of chatbot search built types of things, better than AI overviews. And I remember the caveat we said at the time was, well, that just means they're going to put ads on it soon, and then we'll see what happens then. And now, of course, that's what's happening. So we'll see what happens. I agree with you. I want to test it out. I want to see what the experience is like, but no one knows how to monetize this yet. So everybody's just going to try everything they think might work.
Yeah, I think you summed it up perfectly. I was trying to come up with some really beautiful analogy, and you did, like the idea of sponsored content versus just slapping ads on it. Mm-hmm. There is something rather elementary, but honest about just plastering ads all over, which I can't believe I'm saying that, because that would ode to Google SERPs kind of being very honest, which... Not sure I've said those two things together in the same sentence on the podcast before, but I see what you're saying. I think it's a great analogy for people to kind of think through these different ad models. And then we have what Perplexity AI is doing right now. And then we also have that third model, which is, hey, just pay and you get whatever you need without having to deal with it. You pay per month, or you pay per use, or whatever that is. So, good. If you aren't using Perplexity.ai, let us know what you think about it pre-ad, and maybe we'll keep an eye on what it is like post-ad. With ads in it. So, hey, we got one more story here. This one might hit home for a lot of people that are listening and watching. Kind of out of the blue, I would say. I mean, certainly there's been a lot of changes on this platform recently of late, but kind of out of the blue, HARO, Help a Reporter Out / Connectively, is closing down. This announcement was made a week or two ago, but it's gone on December 9th. Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, HARO is Help a Reporter Out. It was, I'd say, rebranded, but really replatformed to Connectively. I think that was earlier this year or late last year. But basically, it's this platform that allows journalists to connect with the public and publishers in a way to get quotes and get content and get expert insights so that they can use them in their stories. For a lot of people listening, it was a great place to build really high quality links, links that are referencing a brand in a very, well, I'll say a very unique and genuine way. Obviously, there were certain ways that certain people would get on there and brands would kind of game that system. But generally speaking, these were links that were very high quality and were relatively easy to build, provided you had the time to kind of respond to the queries. Over time, obviously, it was getting saturated by online publishers. But nonetheless, still a lot of people were getting great results from it. We've interviewed several kind of HARO link building agencies across the years and kind of learned a lot about how to build those successfully. I know I've had a lot of success on that as well. And so they closed it down starting December 9th. It's owned by the larger brand Sission, and they've owned it for a while now. I don't know if they started it. I can't remember. But here's their quote on why they're closing it down. I'll just read it. It's a little lengthy, and then we'll kind of dive into it. Quote, after assessing feedback from our customers and evaluating our product portfolio, we have decided to focus our attention on core offerings where we see significant opportunities to deliver even more value to our PR. You know what? I'm actually not going to read this whole thing. You get it. They're shutting it down, and they're not really giving us a good reason. I don't need to read that. I have to say I'm bummed. The Connectively move was not necessarily great, but it also wasn't bad. It kind of had it made the platform a little less spammy, made it a little harder to use. But I was still using it. We were still using it, and I was enjoying it. I'm bummed it's going away. What about you? Do you use HARO? Have you used it? And what are your thoughts on this?
I'm sad. Yeah, I have a funny HARO story. So, I mean, for people who used it before the Connectively move, it was really funny. It was like you'd get this really rudimentary email multiple times a day, just text. And it would say,
so
like,
long.
these
reporters, it would be like, cut off, right? Always cut off an email reader. It'd always be like, I'm sorry, we can't get to the whole thing.
Yeah, huge. I mean, every topic you can imagine. And it would list reporters, and you could write back and, share your expertise. And sometimes it would say who the publication was, but sometimes it wouldn't. It would just be a random one. So I would go through and pitch like travel stories, for the Bay Area or just general. They'd ask like, any tips for traveling with kids? And I would write something up. But I saw one that was anonymous for the reporter. And the question was like, we need strong opinions about umbrellas. And I thought, all right, just for fun, I'm going to write back to this because I have a couple minutes. I was sitting in the car or something on my phone. And so I hate umbrellas. So I wrote this super strong take on umbrellas. It was like, they're awful. There's this one that I found that's not terrible, but every other one, they leak on the floor. You lose them after a season. They fall apart, and sent it off to the reporter just kind of for fun. And it turned out it was the Wall Street Journal. So now there's this quote. Thomas Smith, a web publisher, says, and all this like me basically just hating on umbrellas. So that was the fun with HARO, is that you could just find these incredible placements. And it was just so random, and you never knew what you were going to get with it. You send something in and you think, oh, nothing happened. You get no response. And then a month later, there'd be like a quote, you get a backlink and some huge publication. So I'm going to miss it, but I think it's a casualty of AI, because it was just before there was a cost to writing these things. You had to write it by hand, or you had to hire somebody to do it. And now with ChatGPT, and you can easily write back to every single one of them if you want to, and find some way to work into into the why you're an expert, even if you're not. And I think they tried to move to a paid model where you have to pay to submit. But really, that just incentivizes the people who are doing this at scale. If I got to pay $1 each, the person who's really an expert is like, well, I don't want to have to pay to tell you good information. I'm not going to do it. But the person who's doing this, 1,000 a day on ChatGPT, and they get 10 great backlinks, and it ends up costing them $100, whatever, it's not a problem for them. So I'm not surprised that it kind of probably got killed by AI, but I'm going to miss it.
Yeah, I have some equally funny stories where I'm quoted, with my hot takes on like home decor. Again, I wasn't actually pitching that I was an expert in home decor, but I established this relationship with a journalist, and through HARO and through all, it's a funny world, but it was a cool world. It was cool. Obviously, to your point, like so much was, I think they were having problems before AI, right? Like with people pitching off topic to what you're an expert in. And they always had a stance on that. And they threatened to kick people out if you kept bugging journalists with kind of off topic takes and that sort of thing. I don't know where that ever went. Then AI was introduced. I don't know if AI was the reason they moved to Connectively, but that whole process and that whole change was pretty frustrating for a lot of people. And then obviously we were on Connectively for a year or less, something in that range. I didn't look it up, and here we are. There are alternatives. The article does mention alternatives. Let me see if I can pull them up. Everyone's asking if there are alternatives. I mean, I suspect so. Just Google it. Some include one by the original founder of HARO named Sources of Sources, which we did discuss on the latest interview with Chris Pantelli. He went through that one. There's Journo Finder. There are others. I made a list pretty quickly after this was announced so that there's still opportunities. Hey, we'll say it again, like the best thing you could have done with HARO, could have done with Connectively, and the best thing you can do going forward with any future service or kind of platform you use is to try to, yes, use it to get in front of journalists, but then create and maintain those relationships with the journalists one-on-one rather than relying on the platform. A lot of people I know have built relationships with journalists, and now they just, can't go to HARO to get new opportunities, but they still have a nice Rolodex full of journalists they've established relationships with, provided quotes for, and those journalists can come straight back to them now. And I do think to some degree that might be also at play here, to your point about AI, but journalists getting flooded with AI answers are like, I've already got 25 sources in my niche, in my space I can go to about this. I'll just start going to them instead of messing with this kind of AI nightmare.
Yeah, I think it's in some ways similar to the first story we reported here about, the easy way, the Forbes advisor, all that, where you just sort of have this strong domain, you bring in an outside company, they spin up a bunch of affiliate stuff, you put it on your domain and profit. That's gone. Now these brands are going to have to bring it in-house. They're going to have to really review the products. They're going to have to really make the investment. I think this is similar. We all kind of got used to HARO being this kind of incredible way to just get these super high value backlinks without the work of forming those relationships. And now it just means we're going to have to form those relationships, which we probably should have been doing all along. And if anything, I think it's going to weed out some of the people who weren't really experts, couldn't really justify it.
Right.
And so if you can make those relationships with reporters, then those can last much longer and be much higher value. So we just have to do the work in a way that before maybe we got to skate along with a simpler solution.
Hey everyone, Spencer here, founder of Niche Pursuits. Are you adding a new internal link pointing to each article you publish? You should be. Ever find it time-consuming and a bit overwhelming? Remembering what content you publish and deciding which anchor text to use can be a real headache. What if there was a better way? Well, that's exactly why I created Link Whisper. Simply click Add Inbound Internal Links, and Link Whisper will scan your site in seconds and suggest the most relevant links with appropriate anchor text for your new article. Now simply check the box next to the internal links you want to add, and Link Whisper will add these links for you. No need to go into each article, edit, and add the link. It's already done. No more manual internal link building or guesswork. Just efficient, accurate linking that saves you time and improves your SEO. Transform your content strategy with Link Whisper. Start linking smarter, not harder. Use the coupon code PODCAST for $15 off. Head over to linkwhisper.com and use coupon code PODCAST to get $15 off.
C'est la vie. All right. Well, that brings us to a wrap on this week's news, but lots to stick around for. Thomas, I think we're all very excited about some of the things you're bringing to the table. But hey, I've got some stuff to share too. So I'll start with my side hustle, and I'll touch this week on. I mentioned it last week for the first time, but this week you're here, and my side hustle is really a partnership with you. So I'll kind of give an overview of where it's at on week 2. Really, it's like day 9 at this point. It's really very much in its infant stages. But then I want to kind of hear your side of why we're partnering and why it makes sense for you. Basically, I have, and so many of us listening have, like sites that were decimated by the helpful content update. I've talked previously about one of the sites that I went back to and started pursuing Pinterest, and did that throughout the summer. And that site is now earning over $2,000 a month, which was higher than it used to be earning back pre-HCU. Well, I got another site, and in this site did very well back in 2018, 2019, 2020, but again, decimated by the helpful content update, and monetized on Raptive, not making much. It's still getting a little bit of traffic from Bing, still getting a little bit of traffic from Pinterest and social media, but really just kind of laying there. Now, I had built an email built an email list. Sorry, I'm tripping on my words. And back when there was a lot of traffic from Google, that was picking up steam. I had about 14,000 people on it. And so you and I were talking. A lot of it on the back, by the way, of some of the email projects you've been sharing on the Niche Pursuits podcast previously. And you were like, this is a great opportunity, Jared. Like, it's got all the bones, right? It's already got an established email account. It's already got a Raptive ad set up on it. And it's in a very compelling niche. So anyways, we got together. We said, let's partner up on it. I'm short on time. You are too, but for some reason said yes to this. And so we started working on it. Last week, we started emailing once a week. So we're about 7-8 days in on that. This week, in the last couple of days, we've added affiliate links to emails and have made our first sale on Amazon. Like you said, I think we earned about $2, but it's something. And we weren't able to include Amazon links in email back when I used to be doing the email, but that has since changed. So that's a great way to start to earn money. So and also we started publishing to Pinterest just a little bit to kind of warm back up the account, but it's such a good niche for Pinterest that we decided to partner up on the Pinterest side of things as well. I will tell you, it's been a rough week to start a project like this because for the last 6-7 days, Raptive and Google Analytics have struggled with reporting. So there was actually a 6-day period. We finally got revenue data from Raptive yesterday. So we were flying blind after the first 3 days. And then we still don't have data on traffic to correlate into RPM. So we still don't know like where the RPMs are better, but we at least have some data on revenue. And so it's been, I think, quite the success. It's been quite the up and down. There have been some days, the highest day was a $53 day. But we've also had some $43 days. I'm looking here. There was a $40 day, and there were some days in the 30s. And just for clarity, the previous average prior to starting all of this was about $13 to $16 a day. I was running a little bit of Facebook ad traffic, so if I pull that out, it was about $13, $14, $15 a day on average. So going up to 53, 43, 40, like that's a big increase for the first week. I'm really excited about it. I really am just curious about where this could go. Why did you want to partner up? And any additional insights you can add for people listening who might be sitting on a project like this and might be able to gain some inspiration from it?
Yeah, I mean, I've been really all in on email in the last probably 6 months, especially. I've talked about, using Medium to grow an email newsletter, building my local newsletter that's still going really well and growing. For my my other, side hustle update today, I have yet another one. But yeah, I just have seen how email is such a powerful thing at this point because you, on all these platforms, don't really have control over your audience at all. We've seen this really get hammered home, like you said, with the HCU, that you can be doing great for years, decades even, and then suddenly lose everything. And that happens on Facebook, that happens on Pinterest, every one of these platforms. Email is something where you can directly press the button and you're going to reach, probably if you've got a good list, 98% of the people on there, maybe half of them will open it if it's a really good list, and you're in front of thousands of people instantaneously. And I realized, in my own stuff, I've been doing this kind of work. There's a lot of things now, like being able to put Amazon links in an email that add a lot of value. Before, you weren't allowed to directly put affiliate links, but now you can on Amazon Associates. That adds a ton of value to it. AI makes it easier to repurpose or even just to ideate or write content, that kind of thing. If you want to use that, drop in an article, and say, hey, what are some ideas for how I can write a compelling newsletter, or help me write a headline, or, whatever it is. So I think there's a confluence of platforms have gotten riskier. Ad rates are still super high if you're in a premium network. And there's all these new ways to monetize and easier ways to create content. So it just felt to me, this year especially, like this is a time to really lean in. I did that in my own work. People started to reach out and say, hey, can you run my newsletter for me? I think that particularly in a space where you had a lot of traffic, you built a great list, I see so many people who still have Raptive or Mediavine where they can monetize a site really well. They don't have to bother with getting sponsors and that kind of thing. They've got huge amounts of content, man. The site we're working on, I think you have like 700 to 800 articles.
Something like that.
Really
It's over
solid.
700, yeah.
I mean, that's years worth of content when you repurpose and resend stuff that works and all of that. So they're sitting on tons of content, a great way to monetize. And a lot of people built a list because people told them they should, or it was easy to do. You know, you just put a ConvertKit pop up or whatever it is on there, and suddenly you've got this list, in your case, of, you know, over 10,000 people. But people didn't really know what to do with it, and people still don't really know exactly how to create the content for it. So I started to really lean into that for myself, and now I'm doing it for other people. And this just felt like a great opportunity to work together on it, because you had, like you said, all the bones, all the pieces in place. And the strategy, you know, as you mentioned, is daily emails to this list. It's again a niche that's, I would say, sort of a, you know, home DIY type of space. We're not going to share the specifics, but you've got this huge amount of content, and I've already seen that this list converts well, performs well. The strategy from here is really to go from what we've been doing so far, which is, again, testing without data, which is always super fun, to really honing in on, okay, what is going to work? What's the right content length for this list? What do people care about, or what are they willing to click through? What minimizes the risk of getting caught in spam filters? That's a big consideration. Email isn't 100% immune from the same dynamics we see with search. There's still gatekeepers. You can still get blacklisted, which you want to be really careful about. But the strategy from here is look at those $53 or $43 days, say, okay, what can we do to build on that, more of that content, longer content that we send people to on the site, creating new content or adding to content once we see what works, adding in more affiliates, you know, a lot of different ways we can do that, adding in first-party data tracking too. That's a huge one. Eventually, those third-party cookies are going to go away. But if you work with a big partner like Raptive or Mediavine, they now have ways that you can connect your email subscribers and kind of use the data you've gathered about your audience to better target ads, which means higher RPMs. So I'm really excited about it. I would love to see it eclipse the 2,000 a month that you're getting from Pinterest on your other resurrected site. I definitely think we can get there if we continue this. We've already validated that we can send daily emails without too many people dropping off the list. Solid click rates. We've seen what performs well. So we have some data, even, you know, lacking the RPMs. So yeah, I'm excited. I think we can get to 2,000 a month readily, you know, probably over the next couple of months easily.
It's interesting because the data came in yesterday. You know, I was really excited because I've seen the emails go out over the weekend, last week, and just no clue how much it was earning. GA was also, you know, delayed in reporting. And so frustrating. But yesterday the data came in, and to your point, like we had some really good days, but we also had some days in the 20s and 30s, $20, $30 marks. I was like, oh man, I wish it was just constantly up and to the right. And you're like, well, I've been testing different types of emails, right? We got like more of a listicle style, more of an inspirational style, more of a really detailed how-to style. So you were testing purposely different types of emails to see which ones people gravitate towards. And I think it's interesting, like you're already seeing trends in what is working, so you can cater that. And it reminds me, like, don't be afraid to try things in the first couple of weeks of doing these so that you don't just assume you know what converts the best, what works the best, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, and we're honing in, you know, in this particular niche on people want projects because, again, it's a DIY kind of space. They want projects they can sit down and do versus things that are maybe a little bit more skills based. That's pretty interesting, you know, and maybe there's a niche within. That's the other thing we haven't done any really yet. There were some segments, but we haven't really added to that. There's sequences we could build of sending out the skills based stuff to the people who have interest in that specific skill. So I think, but it's also important in the beginning to be careful, right? Because this was mostly a cold list. Like you had a few sequences, but most people have not received an email in 2 years. They signed up for this 2 years ago. It's sad. And that's the case for a lot of people. A lot of you out there have lists that you built because you were told you should, and it's sitting there not doing anything for you. And so the first thing is just to warm it up in a way that doesn't freak people out. And so a lot of it is sending content that people aren't going to be offended by. You know, and I don't mean like that there's anything offensive about this, but stuff that's like, if you're in this niche, you know, I'll give the example of my own niche. If you're in travel and or you're interested in traveling to the Bay Area, which is what my site is largely about, and I say, here's 5 amazing ice cream stores in San Francisco, you're probably going to be okay with reading that content. But if I say, like, here's the best flight to Hawaii, suddenly the spam filters and the users are going to be like, that isn't quite what I signed up for. It feels a little salesy, but, maybe my ice cream article isn't going to earn me as much as best flights to Hawaii. Maybe I can send the best flights two months later when you've gotten a bunch of emails from me and you trust me again. But you have to be careful and balance. And so in the beginning, there's going to be this process, even days off. I gave the list 1 day off because deliverability dropped a little bit. We didn't do a daily email, picked right back up when we resumed. So it's going to be a bumpy ride in the beginning, but you're trying to gather that data and hone in on what works for the list and also doesn't offend, the spam gods at Google. And once you figure that out, I think the best day so far has been a differential. Like you said, there was little earnings before, but a differential of around $30. So you figure if we do that every day, that's $1,000 a month, a little bit more there. And if we just scale that up and continue to build it, I think we can readily get to that 2,000 or more. And again, if you've got a list like this, it's something you can totally do with your own content, your existing content, existing monetization. You don't have to do the scary work of like pitching sponsors and stuff. I hate doing that. So I love that this is pretty much passive.
Yeah. To your point, like any site you have, this is my new frame of mind and why I was so open to partnering, because I just had this kind of coming to know, like any site that you have that's on a premium ad network, you kind of have a head start because you can start earning good money right away, like day 1, day 2, day 3, from whatever actions you start to take. So it's really exciting, and almost all the way back to my Amazon influencer journey, like getting that feedback loop right away, making money on day 3. It wasn't much, but it's so invigorating to help you continue the process. Whereas so much of what we've had to do is endure a lot of months of really like just frustration and reduced earnings and stuff. So even though it's not much money, it is also nice to get a quick feedback loop, see something working, create that positivity. It encourages me to want to work on it more. In this case, I don't have to work on it. I'm just working with you on it.
Yeah. But no, it was great. Yeah. The first day it was like a $20 differential of what was happening before. And the second day, it was more like a $40. And so that's very motivating.
Well, we've got to leave time for yours because I know yours is email based. You did really reveal that. But what the heck did you do? And what the heck is going on with your side hustle this week?
So I mistakenly, completely by accident, started a food safety newsletter. Really didn't intend to do this. I published a food safety article about a recall of McDonald's hamburgers that people were probably aware of that happened about 3 weeks ago now. This was a big story. It was all over the national media. And I've shared before that for some reason, Google thinks my Bay Area travel website is an authority on like Starbucks and McDonald's. Don't know why, but for some reason, they seem to think it. So I published a story about this McDonald's recall. And I've started as one strategy, whenever I publish a new sort of type of story, I create a new landing page for a list in that category on ConvertKit on my existing list. And I just drop a link in at the end, so whatever the topic is, if I'm publishing about like travel in Southern California, I'll spin up a newsletter landing page that says the SoCal Traveler, and I'll put a link in there. And if people sign up, then I'll start a sequence and I'll start sending them things. So I did this with food safety. I wrote, I think, a pretty good and compelling CTA and made a ConvertKit landing page and a segment within my existing list, dropped it at the end of this article. Long story short, the article completely took off. I think it's up to several million impressions. It's on an aggregator, interestingly. So I published on my own site, but it gets picked up on all of these aggregators. I'm not allowed to say which one. They're very protective, but it's things like MSN or Smart News, for example, or these places that'll pick up these stories. Millions of impressions, hundreds of thousands of views on this article, and bunch of people, as a result of that, clicked through and signed up for my food safety newsletter. So all of a sudden, I'm like, okay, now I have this thing. I obviously have to deliver and actually start to use it for something and deliver what I told people I was going to do. So I started sending out a sequence to that list, continued to grow it and publish more food safety stories. Let me actually just quickly here see if I can get you a live count of how many subscribers I have. It's going up and up. It's at 884.
Good grief.
over the last 2.5 weeks or so on this. And so, yeah, now I've got a sequence. It's probably 6 or 7 emails in it. It's the same play I've used for my other newsletters. It basically teases the story. There's an intro. Usually it's written by AI for the intro. I've got the main featured image for the story, and then a link back to that story on my site. Super simple. And people end up in the sequence. It's every 2 days at this point. They get one of these emails, and it sends them back to my site, and I monetize with Mediavine. Also, I've started to drop in some affiliate stuff in there. So I'm trying to think of like what appeals to people who care about food safety. I've got like meat thermometers. I've got vacuum sealers. Every day gets some kind of product dropped in there too. So yeah, I mean, total accidental thing. But apparently it's a very compelling topic to people. So I'm just going to keep building that sequence and see where it takes me.
I mean, what are the paths to monetization on it? Like you mentioned some varying things like that could lend itself to sponsored content, affiliate content. I mean, like what, I realize you're kind of making it up as you go, but like, what are the ideas for what, like, are there any threads of what is working yet for monetization?
And so I think there's 2 pieces. There's the breaking stories that people find super compelling and they kind of have to engage with it. And that's these food recalls where, something gets recalled. And most recently it's carrots. There was a big carrot recall 2 days ago. Now I'm tuned into this world, so I have to follow it. And it's one of these sort of breaking stories where people want to know immediately what's going on. There's really authoritative sources, the CDC and FDA, you can pull from for this, which is great. You're not having to make up, content. You're really reporting on actual stuff that's happening, and they provide a ton of data that you can sift through. So the content is almost there for you on that. And people share it. It's very shareable. Like they read a story that talks about carrots were recalled. Here's the brands to look for in your fridge. Here's why it's a problem. And they forward it to all their friends to say, hey, go check your fridge. And, it's useful. It's good information to share. I feel good about sharing it with people. But it also means people forward the emails, they forward the articles along. So it grows the list. That kind of stuff, the breaking news content, I think is a great way to grow the list. It's harder to monetize because it is very kind of, newsy. The RPMs aren't great. The article length isn't great. But, probably $15 to $20 RPMs when people click through. And they certainly share it, and it does well. But then what I'm looking at with these sequences is what evergreen content can I send out to the list? Stuff that's going to always appeal to people who are interested in food safety. And what it is so far is not really safety stuff. It's more explainers and like behind the scenes of like what is in your fast food. So one that's done really well, I have an article about what's really in a McDonald's Filet-O-Fish. So that's an article. When you see that headline, oh, I wonder what is. So you click through, and I have this whole thing with all the information, quotes from McDonald's, pictures, all that kind of stuff. That kind of story does really well as an evergreen story. And so that's what's in my sequence, and it's all ad monetized on that. People click through to my site, they read the story. Those are more like a $30 to $40 RPM so far. So if I can build a sequence like that has maybe 50 to 100 messages in it, a year long, once you get on my list here, you come in for the food recalls and you keep getting that content, but you also every other day get some kind of interesting, quirky, fun food article and you click through.
It's a good point. Well. I mean, I was trying to think as you were talking, like, where does this go? But I suppose if you're interested in food recalls, you might be interested in it because you had McDonald's yesterday, but you might also just be interested in it because you're kind of interested in this concept of food safety, food health, what goes into food, how the world works, and you start to nurture people along. You're exactly right. That could turn into a newsletter where you're like telling your friends a month later, I don't know why, but I got this bizarre guy's email list and I'm learning all this stuff about meat production across the Americas.
I think the most important thing is it's not wholly new. It's sort of a segment and a piece within my existing website. And it's content I was already writing about. Again, weirdly, McDonald's and Starbucks and these other brands. So it's easy enough to tack this on. And I don't have to grow to 10,000 views a month to get into a premium ad network. I don't really have to like create a new domain and manage all of that. It's even coming from my same email. I don't have like a separate email for it. It's literally like it's called the Food Alert by the Bay Area Telegraph. It's branded with my existing brand. And so I think that's the key. Like if I had to spin up a whole new domain and website and, ConvertKit account for every new space I went into, that would be overwhelming. But with this, it's just an add-on. It reflects each day in my earnings on Mediavine for my site, and it's just a little like tailwind, just pushing things along, a little extra traffic every day.
That's great. Well, we got to move into weird niches. We are way behind on time here. Keep us posted on that. Speaking of weird niches, that's a weird side hustle, which will transition us perfectly into weird niches.
Yeah.
My weird niche is not very weird. I'll say that at the outset. I think that the concept of it is weird, and that's why I wanted to share it. It's also very relevant to what we're doing right now. And that is the website is slickdeals.net. Now, many of you might have heard of this. Matter of fact, I would think maybe most of you would have heard of this. It's basically a deal aggregator site, and people absolutely go nuts for deals.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so funny because I used to use this and then I stopped using it. And I just never thought about it. And then all of a sudden somebody reminded me of it and I started using it again every once in a while. Basically what they've done is they've aggregated community in order to, whenever people find deals, they will post them through their account here. And then they have a system where different deals get upvoted or supported almost in a Reddit manner. And so the best deals kind of rise to the top. They also kind of cater it. So they have for you. I don't know how they have this considering I don't have an account with them. But maybe they just know from my browsing history, or maybe they're just making guesses. So I think it was interesting. I just wanted to share a little backstory on the site. So it was started. Oh, I lost my tab there. It was started back in 1999, which I think is really fascinating. And it was started by a guy, I believe, named Van. And he started this just in order to kind of share the types of deals he was looking at. He was broke. And now the site gets an insane volume of traffic. I believe I saw 18 million page views a month. It does have a lot of advertisements on it. It has turned itself into quite the I would say quite the ad platform, right? We got ads on the right. We got ads interspersed inside the deals.
Mm-hmm.
Again, you got banner ads here as you scroll down. I imagine time on page has to be pretty darn good because you just kind of scroll through all these offers to try to find the one you want. You do have search capability, but I mean, it just isn't something that that I think a lot of people probably do. I think this is interesting. Many, many years ago, they did an Ask Me Anything on Reddit. So this is 11 years ago.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and it's really fun to read through. Here it is. Van, the founder, started the website in 1999 as a poor, starving college student. 12 million unique visitors a month. This was 11 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
They had 3 employees in 2009. Now they have 35 employees and they're growing fast. Again, this is 11 years ago. So this is a really popular website. And finally, if you go over to Ahrefs, I think this is also interesting. Huge domain, DR78. But look at this. They had a nice burst in the summer of last year, and then they got knocked down, maybe by helpful content update or maybe by subsequent core updates. And they actually are getting hit by the November core update right now. So I don't know why. I mean, user-generated content is in vogue, but right before Black Friday, that's kind of a bummer for them. But just a cool website. A cool concept. I mean, started on the back of someone who was broke in college, wanting to share deals, something he was passionate about. And look what it's grown into now. It's almost like a very large scale success story from a very small scale concept.
Yeah, I think when you have UGC, it's amazing what you can do with very little, right? Like if people engage and they start making your content for you, then you can, have like they were doing 11 years ago, a huge amount with a very small team relative to, what they're probably making from affiliate commissions and sponsored stuff from brands and advertising. And to do that, like a UGC play in a space where it's so commercial, it's so much about buying stuff, that feels like they really either played their cards right or lucked into something that seems like it's super successful.
I mean, some of both, to be sure. Like like you said, the commercial intent for someone looking for a deal is, I'm dying to open my wallet. Just give me a good deal to open it for.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you're in the shopping cart, you add the thing, and then it says, there's a coupon code, and you think, oh, I wonder if there's any deals. You go and search, and you land on this. Oh, yeah, I can get it for 50% off here. you're literally like at the last stage, I think, in most cases of the funnel
Amazing.
at that point.
Amazing. So, okay, I'm going to turn it over to you here, and I'll boot your weird niche up on screen while you're talking.
Yeah, so mine is allaboutbirds.org. And as the name suggests, it's an informational website about different kinds of birds. So I think there's some interesting things here. One is, the amount of traffic that it gets, which we'll get to in a second. But I think it's very much what we would make in our space if we were going to make a website about birds. If you go in, like I found it, I looked for turkey, put turkey into Google, and I was looking for some Thanksgiving recipes. But it gave me like SERP diversity. Maybe you want to learn all about the bird turkey. So I put that in, and it's got a great, informational page. But honestly, we could probably these days spin up something like this using stock media, photos and AI to create a comparable website. But the reason that this is done so well, I think, is that they're using a big brand. In this case, this is affiliated with Cornell University. So it's Cornell Labs. It's its own division within the university, interestingly. So it's sort of independent in some ways, but it uses that Cornell brand and has all these connections and a lot of big name professors and people who participate in this. So yeah, the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. And what I think is really interesting about the site is that they've done a great job of taking that brand and creating this really good content around it and ranking really well and doing really well. So they're a DR82. Href says they get 1.4 million monthly search traffic. Again, like bird watchers are very passionate, and so they come to the site. Most of the pages they're ranking are just this, profile of a particular bird. Where does it live? What does its call sound like? I dug a little bit deeper. They actually report in their advertising info where they're pitching to ads. We'll get that in a second. They have 5.08 million page views per month on the site.
Wow.
So they are taking that brand and with content that, again, we could probably all spin up. Like we're looking at the Ahrefs, Cooper hawk, wild turkeys. It's not super in depth, academic papers or anything. They are doing incredibly well on it. But the thing that I think is most interesting about this is that then what they've done with that is exactly what any of us in this industry would do with it. Like a lot of the time, academic sites, okay, they get the traffic, but sure, they have an advantage because they're not really monetizing. They're not doing stuff. They are doing everything that we would do to monetize this site. There's ads at the top of the page. They seem to be doing direct sales to related brands. So they've got an above the fold ad at the very, very top. And they've got courses. So they have a bunch of these like $40 how to paint birds, the joys of bird watching, bird call identification that you can enroll in. And, this is exactly what we would do, right? We would do ads. We would do some kind of digital product. And I, again, dug a bit into it. Their program income, they're a nonprofit, so we have a lot of good data about them. This probably includes some in-person stuff too, but their program income is $4,745,000 a year.
Gosh.
So these courses with an audience of 5 million people coming and a strong brand and probably really good courses, $40-$50, they're probably earning millions of dollars a year from this. So I think it's a great story about the opposite of the parasite world, right? They took a great brand, they created a whole community of passionate people. They put up content that's good. Again, we could probably spin it up if we needed to. It's good stuff. They monetized in all the ways you should monetize, and they're doing great work and earning a ton of money, probably for Cornell from it.
Fascinating. They do it right. I mean, the site is beautiful, but to your point, like it's not like just a nonprofit philanthropic exercise. They have ads, they have courses, they have live lectures. It's like a full-fledged brand, but like you said, it's just kind of the way we would do it if we were doing it. If we built a perfect site, if we put everything we had and we could put everything we had into kind of one project, you're exactly right. That looks pretty much exactly like how we would do it.
Yeah. And in a niche that a lot of us would target, like bird watching, a hobbyist niche like that. There's a ton of content you could create around it. It's not like this is particle physics or something that none of us are going to be able to do. It is the site we would all build. But again, that power of the brand, power of good products. And think about if this was a for-profit business, millions of dollars a year just in digital course sales. They don't even report what their advertising earnings are. But I have to imagine pretty solid with that above the fold ad.
Thomas, I think your next side hustle is to go pitch Berkeley, Cal Berkeley, on starting some side site like this for them and maybe split the profits with them.
Let's do it. Yeah, if they've got a newsletter, all the better.
Hey, that hour flew by. Thomas, thanks for joining us. Great news topics. Obviously, we'll continue to follow along with some of these stories. It's not the first time we've covered them as they continue to evolve. Some new stuff. AI now starting to have advertisements in them. Goodbye to HARO. Side hustle successes, and definitely some odd niches to finish out on. Thanks again for joining us, Thomas.
That was great talking with you.
Have a great weekend, everyone. We'll talk again soon.
Hey there, thanks so much for listening to the Niche Pursuits podcast. Did you know that Jared and I are members of a private group called the Niche Pursuits Community? And today I want to share with you how you can join for just $1. The Niche Pursuits Community is a private members area for niche online publishers to mastermind and grow their businesses together. We hold weekly calls live with experts where you can ask questions. These experts share tips on Amazon Influencer, Google Discover, building email newsletters, getting traffic from Facebook, and other strategies to grow your online business. You'll also be assigned a mastermind group of 4 or 5 other people in a similar stage in business as you. Dive deep into your business issues and get your problems solved. If you use coupon code PODCAST at checkout, you'll get your first month for just $1. Go ahead and give it a try. Come join me, Jared, and lots of other digital entrepreneurs inside my private group at community.nichepursuits.com. And be sure to use coupon code PODCAST. I'll see you on the inside.